you're listening to the Diablo podcast. This is Flux, and we are online at diablopodcast.com. I am currently in the Runic Games Studios in Seattle, and I'm speaking with Max Schaefer.
Hey guys.
And he is, as we all know, formerly of Diablo II fame, and Diablo 1, and briefly Diablo 3, a horrible deep dark secret. And we've been playing Torchlight 2 and talking about that, and I took part in a cool podcast. You like that one, right, Max? We had a whole group in here.
Yep, yeah, it was fun.
And we've been playing the game, and I'm going to get a few questions for our Diablo podcast about Torchlight 2 and some Diablo stuff as well. And I put up a post saying, hey, anybody got questions about Torchlight or Max Schaefer or both? And lots of people had questions about Torchlight, which we pretty much covered in the previous podcast. That was quite thorough. I was hoping to either get you or Eric or Travis and ask questions, and everything came up in that one, so that'll just be that.
Cool.
But people always have these old questions about, if you can cast your mind back 87 years, some of the cooler features in Diablo 2, like just for instance, hardcore mode. Do you recall anything about how that came about?
Wow, how it came about. You know, the discussion always comes up of what should the death penalty in the game be?
Capital.
Huh?
Extreme.
Yeah, and you know, there was you know, that's a subject of, you know, you ask 10 people, you'll get 10 different answers on what the cool way to deal with it is. You know, I was even talking to Travis earlier, is I'd like to have a go back and do a corpse retrieval mode for Torchlight, you know, where if you die, you got to go get your corpse, because...
Would you pop?
Well, yeah. And because there was something, you know, for me, I really had some of my most exciting times going and getting my corpse in Diablo 1, as well as some of my worst times. But, you know, so it's always a debate of what's an appropriate death penalty. And I think that what we arrived at with the Diablos was something that was relatively non-penalizing. And I think hardcore came about as just a kind of a way to get the whole other side of the spectrum covered as well. It's like, okay, well, as long as we're going to make the regular game relatively safe for dying, let's have a mode that's exactly the opposite way, that like you literally will die forever. And it just seemed to kind of round out what the choices we had made were.
Had that been done before, to your knowledge?
It probably has. It probably had been.
But you weren't copying it. As far as you knew at the time, it was...
For myself, yes. I can't speak for Dave Brevik or Eric. They may well have known of RPG that had a hardcore mode before.
I'm sure something had, but...
Yeah, I mean...
Obviously, Diablo
we don't actually have original thoughts ever, you know.
Yeah. Diablo 2 obviously popularized it.
Yeah.
And then they carried it over and you put it in Torchlight 1 and people liked it?
Yeah, I think hardcore mode's here to stay.
And now it's in Torchlight 2 and Diablo 3 also has it.
For sure.
And one of the things they've changed in Diablo 3 is there's no corpse looting anymore. You just have a shared stash. So it's kind of an interesting trade-off, whereas in Diablo 2 you could corpse loot, but anything in your stash was gone forever. And now it's basically the opposite of that.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, it's probably a valid choice as well. You know, there's lots of solutions here, and you know, I don't know exactly where I come down on it anymore.
Another feature that was new in Diablo 2, at least at the time, was the unique skill trees for all the characters.
Yeah.
You know, we had D1, you just had spell books, and everybody could have fireball and teleport, etc. And do you recall in D2 that was just something you were thinking we need to have individual character classes?
Yeah, more differentiation between the classes and more you know, in character sort of skills. It just seemed like the natural expansion of the concept of having different character classes to begin with.
And it must have been, you know, you had, what were they, like 20 skills or something in Diablo 1, 25 spells, and suddenly you need 150 now.
Yeah.
And obviously some were passives, so it wasn't that hard, but you must have been thinking, this is going to be a lot of work.
This is why Diablo 2 was late. But one of the many reasons Diablo 3...
Do you feel that an action RPG, if it's not delayed at least once, it's not going to be any good?
Something was wrong with your design then.
Yeah. Because you had the Diablo 1 and Diablo 2, and obviously Torchlight is running a little... Torchlight 2 is taking a little longer than you expected.
Yeah, a little bit longer. But and obviously Diablo 3 is as well.
Was it?
I think it was probably not a 10-year development cycle.
No,
by
that wasn't your initial whiteboard?
Not in our first documents.
No.
But you know, it's really easy to see. You know, making these games is really easy to see how it happens. Not only do things take longer than you think they're going to take, always, but in the course of making your game, after you've designed and pitched it and got your deal. In the course of making it, you come up with new ideas, and you don't really budget that into your schedule ever before. So it's a miracle if any of these games ever comes out on time.
And if it came out on time, you would be missing all those cool features.
Yeah, you'd be suspicious that they're
really
cutting
corner. Yeah. Speaking of original character stuff, in Diablo II, you expanded the world a lot from the Diablo 1 version. Obviously it was just Tristram in this little caves, and then you got a whole world map and stuff. Like something like the Amazon is not like a typical, dark fantasy RPG. She doesn't shit bats kind of thing.
Sure.
She's not real gothic and hardcore. But it seemed like it worked really well in the game.
Yeah, I think part of the charter for Diablo from the very beginning was to make it a familiar fantasy RPG, but stay away from a lot of the tired archetypes. So, don't have elves and dragons and a lot of the things that every fantasy RPG has, and try to do a little twist on it. And I think the Amazon just came from that. Also, there aren't a lot of archetypal female fighting characters to draw from.
Unless they're like Red Sonja kind of thing. Sometimes you get the swordswoman. But
right.
Ivazan obviously wasn't that.
Right. So it was, again, just kind of drawing from all the cool things from history.
Another popular Diablo II character that has not really been done since was the Necromancer. And people really seem to that's still like the biggest complaint about D3. People still say, well, why isn't the Necromancer back? Yeah. And the developers have actually said, Jay Wilson and others have said things like, well, we thought they did really well in Diablo 2. We didn't really see a lot to expand upon. And how did you make such a magical character that no one could replace or improve upon?
First of all, I don't think that's true. I don't think that it's unimprovable.
Just play along.
Right. Okay.
your false modesty.
That was one of those. The design was to make a summonable, summon character class, and I'm trying to think back to whose idea the Necromancer actually was in the beginning, and I want to say it was Phil Schenk, but I don't know if that's actually true. So I'm not going to play. But it was probably his idea. I actually just saw him this weekend. But yeah, boy, what a fun and different. It also gave an outlet for all of our gothy fans out there. Something that's a little darker to play. It's like you're not sure if he might be evil.
I think the curses are a real original fact of him, where it's a cool form of magic, but it's not really an attack.
Right.
Obviously minions are in a lot of games. Skeletons and golems and stuff. But that's not something at all you see in Diablo 3. And Torchlight is more of a direct attack. You don't really have that kind of indirect affect thing.
You get some with the little bots that give you auras and stuff, but the curses were. God, you're making me want to make another Necromancer class now.
Actually.
But in Corpse of Blood, the best skill of all time. Is really only appropriate for.
As the description actually said in the pre-game, it said the greatest skill ever was the best skill of all time.
Yeah, and it's true. And you can really only do that with that sort of character class.
There's obviously sort of these basic character modes and types in RPGs. Like you gotta have a mage, you gotta have the big strong barbarian type, you gotta have the summoner. Do you feel like, and nobody was surprised the 5th character class in Diablo 3 was an archer? I mean, everybody knew it was going to be an archer.
There's like a missing peg of
Did you feel, you have 4 class, you had 3 in Torchlight, which were kind of similar to, I guess, the Diablo 2, Diablo 1 character classes. And now you've got 4 in Torchlight 2. Did you kind of break it up, like on whiteboard, we want, combat, range attack, mage?
I think that it maybe is room for us to put in a Necromancer.
No. There's a little bit of summoning in there now, right?
Yeah. I think that we just you try to round out, so that you don't have any glaring omissions in what kind of character classes you have, because there's everyone likes a different sort of class. Some people love to just summon things, and some people only like to wade in and bash things, and you want to have your spectrum covered, and also to do it in a way that isn't an obvious copy of someone else's. It's tough. Making new character classes is, in a way, it's like if you just start with one good one, you can derive all the rest of them.
Well, they kind of have to fill in the gaps that one doesn't cover.
Right, exactly.
You've got kind of the Torchlight 2 has the same sort of skill trees as Torchlight 1, where they're all there's enough difference. Like this is kind of the summoning tree, this is kind of the attack tree.
Right.
So they're kind of, I wouldn't say they're exactly hybrid characters, but you do have multiple different ways you can take them.
That's the mark of well-designed skill trees, is that you can actually make meaningfully different characters out of one character class, and I think that's one of our main challenges is to make sure that people will be able to make different types of characters within a character class.
Another thing about Diablo II that was very popular was the item game. I mean, you could even say that's what really is sustaining it for so long. It's that perfect slot machine. And obviously, you expanded greatly what was in Diablo II Classic to expansion to patches out in their own. Do you recall the original work, some of the early stuff on the items? That was your brother doing a lot of that?
Yeah, he did a ton of it and is still doing it now for Torchlight as well.
Alas, he's not here today. So.
Yes, he can't.
He's been summoned in effigy about a dozen times today. We did the podcast like, oh, Eric could do that.
Like, it's part of his mysterious persona, though. He's never seen in public.
Yeah. So, do you remember? I mean, obviously, it's been a long time with Diablo 2, but you were expanding on the items in Diablo 1. You wanted to add rares, you added sets, you added uniques. I mean, they were uniques, but obviously they were expanded upon.
Yeah, and I think we're finally getting set items right now. You can actually find more than one of them and use them as a set. Yeah,
the original D2C sets were very low level, and they were like mixture, like a level 1 and a level 25 in the same set. So you would never want to use both at the same time on any character.
Didn't make any sense at all. Yeah.
And Torchlight 1, you guys have called it, I think, item soup, or it was kind of...
Yeah.
You didn't have time to really... In Torchlight 2, you really feel like you've gone over that a lot more?
Yeah, we're trying to really make specific ways for you to get more items of a set, for example. I mean, we've made this sort of game a lot of times, and each time you try to improve over the weaknesses of the previous iterations.
I noticed one of the things in Torchlight 2 is you can get... A lot of the early quests, you get an item for it, and you can specify which item you want. And some of them actually looked like a number of pieces from the same item set. Right. So you can't do that quest 4 times in a row and get all 4 items, but
but again, we want you to find more. We want sets. We want you to actually get some of those benefits of having multiple items in a set. Yeah, when it's reasonable for you to do so, when it would actually be something you choose.
And you've got in-game sets, I assume, that are kind of you'll want this when you're level 90, and this will be awesome.
Yeah, totally.
There was a game event earlier this year, a convention in Germany, I believe it was called Gamescom, where you were almost killed by orcs and trolls, right? Was that the same time?
That was a different time. It was a trip a month later.
Your infamous LARPing.
I was foisted into a LARPing episode.
Did you ever get off that geometry you were stuck on?
Yeah.
That was the best part.
We had turned the camera away and I restarted real quick.
You had to reboot the level.
Right.
But anyway, a month before that at Gamescom.
They sprung that on me, by the way, at the last moment. I was there just doing interviews with magazines and showing the game. They're like, would you mind doing a video? And I'm thinking, they're going to interview me or something.
And you walked out in the woods.
Next thing I know,
we're walking. Suits, right?
All of a sudden, we're walking out behind the offices.
You're climbing off this ledge and there's some bog. And
there was holes in that bog.
And that was you and Wonder just running around.
Yeah, pretty much.
They gave you a big sword and you were like...
Yeah, they said, just head out and roll with it.
Had you LARPed previously?
I have never. That was my one and only LARPing experience.
Will you be doing it again?
They were fun guys and it was a fun time,
It was the most dangerous piece of cardboard wrapped in aluminum foil you've ever held in your
life. Right? I was scared to hit the guy's heart. I probably should have just whacked him.
Anyway, at Gamescom, you were there doing some interviews in Germany. You were not showing Torchlight 2 at that event.
We were showing it to press behind the scenes.
But it wasn't a big display kind of thing.
Correct.
And somebody asked, I don't recall how it
that was because of the previous Gamescom's debacle.
Yeah. What was this debacle?
Oh god, yeah. Where to start on that? Okay, so we showed Torchlight there too, Torchlight 2 there as well, and Germany has some particularly stringent censorship laws, and so we submitted our game trailer to the Gamescom people, and it was just a random trailer of gameplay footage, and they gave it I don't know, it was like the 12+ rating or whatever it is. And so we figured that, that's what we're going to get over there. And so when we submitted our game for rating right at the last moment before we went to the show, we got stuck with the 16 and over rating, which meant that we actually had to erect a black curtain around our booth to keep the children from seeing the horrors that are found in Torchlight. And
Torchlight is not exactly a gruesome game.
No, it's cartoony. That's why it caught us all by surprise. It caught our publisher by surprise. It caught onlookers by surprise. And apparently it's just you get some random chucklehead censor, and he gives you an arbitrary number, and it doesn't matter if it fucks up your life.
There's walking skeletons and stuff, I guess, that are...
Yeah, and I don't know what it was. So Gamescom is a very long and loud and brutal convention because it's the biggest and greatest games convention there is, and it's actually really cool, but working it's really long and hard, and so we only had one shift of people there for all 5 days, so we had to work every minute of it.
And 5 days?
Couple out of 5 days from like 8 a.m. to or 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. I mean, they get long hours there, and having to have this black curtain around this stuffy area where we're showing the game the whole time. It was just a fatiguing and horrible nightmare. And so we said, next time we definitely want to come to Gamescom again because it's huge and it's cool. Let's go down to the press area and have a nice quiet demo area to show the game. So it was much
this
more
year you
pleasant.
were in the press demo area.
We were in the press demo area and we were much happier.
And someone asked you at some point in the show about Diablo III, and you said something, you made a very bold, it's like you were even joking. You said, it's never coming out this year, there's no way.
Yeah.
Some words to that effect.
Yeah, it was funny. It was after the interview was over, they're saying, just the topic around the room got, so what do you think about Diablo 3? And I weighed in that based on my judgment of making Diablo 2 and being a year late with that and all this, I thought, they're not going to make it because it always takes you longer. It wasn't anything about Diablo 3. I didn't have any inside information. I didn't know anything that everyone else didn't know. The next morning I got angry calls about some article with a headline that says Max Schaefer announces D3 will not make this year.
Yeah.
I thought, oh God, this is why I have trouble with interviews.
It's or else it's why you're good with interviews. You'll say things that are interesting.
I guess. And it turned out I was right, which maybe saves my ass a little bit on this one.
Yeah, like a month later, Blizzard announced, and I did a big post like Max Schaefer was right or something like that.
I was never meant to be in an article in the first place. I don't know anything about Diablo.
So you weren't just trolling for attention and mentioning Diablo 3 to be controversial. It just kind of came up in conversation.
Not at all. Yeah, I'm glad it turned out that I was right, just so I didn't look like an idiot. But not for
So you didn't have instant information. People were like, "Oh, Max would know. He knows people. He must have told him something."
I swear to God, I have no information on that product.
You told me last time we talked in a podcast that I was the expert on Diablo.
Yeah, you're my mole in the Blizzard world.
Yeah, I'm the kind of mole that you get lasered off by Blizzard, not the kind that digs underground. I interviewed David Craddock recently.
That's good.
I was talking to David Craddock.
You work with the mole you have, not the one you want.
And I've been lasered off by Blizzard Irvine's. What do they call those things you laser on moles with? Those the
laser. Right?
Cosmetic. I don't know. There's some word for it. Whatever.
The mole laser.
I was talking to David Craddock recently. I did a podcast with him. He's writing a book about Blizzard North, and he mentioned that you guys were working on a whole Asian-themed version of Diablo II for a console, and you were like, "What?"
Absolutely no recollection of this, or who said it, or what. It may be the drugs or something, but I seriously have no.
Is that your drug or someone else?
I don't. But either case is possible. But no, I have no recollection of such a thing, and I don't believe that was happening at Blizzard North. But if it was, I hope someone will refresh my memory.
It'll be something to see when his book comes out next year.
Yeah.
He also mentioned that he heard some interesting stuff about Project X, which, of course, you had many Project X's.
Yeah, Project X was a category more than a...
And so Diablo 2 was kind of everybody working at Blizzard North at that time, right? You didn't really expand.
Everyone in the office was on Diablo 2.
And then after that came out in late 2000, you started to really expand. And
we kind of just always wanted to kind of split into two teams, and it's notoriously difficult to do that for a game studio, to have everyone working on something and then split into two teams. It sounds like it'd be easy, but it is really hard to do. And we decided that would be a good time after Diablo 2 to split into the two teams and have one team half the people working on Diablo 2 expansion, and then half the people starting up something that wasn't Diablo, because after a while you start to go insane making these things.
And they were just kicking around ideas for...
and it would... Yeah, exactly.
And nothing ever got to be like prototype point, it was all still...
they all got to prototype point, but that's when you decide, okay, do we want to go a different direction or do we want to keep doing this? And so this sort of thing happens in every game company, and since the PR people only want to mention the stuff that's going to come out and is going to be awesome, it never gets revealed to the public. But it's not like we always hit everything just right the first time. And so there was some experimentation and attempts to make something new and fresh that wasn't Diablo.
Different genre,
or somewhat. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like a pinball game or something, but it was not. And it depends on which iteration we're talking about.
Yeah, there were lots of different iterations. Yeah. There were Mike Dashow for a long time had a bunch of concept art on his site about an unreleased Blizzard project, Blizzard North, and since Runic, and it would look like what people expected. It was like an RPG or an RTS kind of thing with like 4 different races, and there were like lizard people, and there were like dragon people and stuff. Mm-hmm. This ring any bells, or is this all?
Yeah, I remember these. that stuff. Yeah, and it was all, again, like I said, I don't think there was anything particularly unusual about our stumbling approaches to making two teams. But yeah, there was I don't want to get in trouble by saying something that I shouldn't, but yeah, we had projects that involve dragony lizard people and lizard people.
That's half the games in there.
And you can just fill in the details with your mind. That's basically it.
6 months from shipping, just fill in the details with your mind. If you could program with your mind, how long
would just outsource the details.
Some lizard people, a little more lizard on this one. Fire it up, because it's so easy to bring in extra workers. What's so hard about splitting into two teams, by the way? Just you have people who are really good at level design, and you need 4 of them instead of 2 of them? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're so used to having the resources of everyone in the company available to you that all of a sudden, like, I really want that guy to make me something, but he's on the other team. Introduces a whole new dynamic into it. So you have to divvy up the people, because it's very also difficult to have someone that works on both projects, because both team leads want them to urgently do something, and you don't want to split the time between them. At the same time, we were also transitioning from the sprite-based world to the 3D world, so we were also making all new tech at the same time. And we were even at the time going to have different engines and tech between D3 and Project X's.
Do you think, obviously your Diablo 3 didn't get finished, but do you think you would have been happy with how it would have looked given the capacities of 3D engines at that point?
I think that the guys now are making it look a whole lot better than what we were making. Yeah.
Because I wasn't a fan of, like I played Ultima Online, which was 2D. I was a big fan of Diablo 2's look. And then, EverQuest came out, and it was just so polygony.
Right.
We didn't
want it to look like EverQuest, that's for sure.
And even, World of Warcraft obviously is a step above that in terms of the artistic and the skins and stuff. But it's still pretty simple in terms of the polygons and shapes.
Yeah, I think that it would have been a challenge to make it look even as good as Diablo 2 and the expansion looked. But there's cool things you can do with 3D that you can't do with sprites too. So that hopefully would have compensated for some of it.
Yeah, when I talked to you last, I asked you with this hypothetical situation: if some billionaire investor said, "I want to give you $100 million to make a giant, huge World of Warcraft-sized Torchlight MMO," and you said, "No, too much work. I don't want a 5-year development cycle." You still feel that way? Obviously Torchlight 2 is closer to being finished now.
Yeah, I think that it would depend on when you ask me this question, because when you're near the end of a project, all you can think of is just making a Tetris-sized game next. Just something that you can bang out because you're so bogged down in shipping a big product. But yeah, I don't think that. First of all, I'm old, and 5 years starts to be meaningful.
Yeah.
And just in general, I don't know. I think that with the tools and the tech they have nowadays, that you can make interesting, fun, cool, innovative games in 3 years and less. And
sometimes 1 year and less.
Sometimes 1 year. Yeah, that's what I mean. Just again, depending on the design, even an ambitious size game can be made in 3 years. I think that kind of basic economics and attention spans in the playing public kind of demand a faster go around. I'm speaking as someone running an independent game studio. As someone like Blizzard has the luxury of being able to spend as much time as it takes to get it to work, and that's to their credit. They put themselves in that position. But most of the world doesn't have that sort of luxury, and so we have to kind of figure out how to make this an economically viable industry and make our companies not go out of business all the time.
And it's tricky also with that long just to think how you're going to hit the market point. You're kind of, I want to make a game like this, and 4 games like that might come out in the next 5 years.
Wait, and something like the internet might get invented during that time too. That changes everything. That's definitely true. Over the course of 5 years nowadays, technology changes radically.
Yeah, and speaking of Blizzard, one of the questions someone asked me to ask you, which is convenient since I'm now talking to you.
Mm-hmm. This is a good time for that.
Yes, I should bring that up now. If only an opportunity would arise. As he said, it was similar to that previous question about the MMO version. Is can you imagine working for a big company like Blizzard again? Like if you were going to become Blizzard Northwest, you don't want you like your independence, you like your smaller studio.
Yeah, and but at the same time, even within a big corporate construct, you can make arrangements to forge some individuality and autonomy. But that's something that you have to fight for constantly. And I think when we were at Blizzard North, we had that. I mean, I think that both studios kind of worked in, didn't have any pressure from above for how to do things, or what to make next, or who to hire, or who to fire, or what to pay them, or anything like that. You know, we really had a ton of autonomy, and you know, I don't know if that exists in Blizzard still. I think it does. You know, I can't imagine someone telling Blizzard what to do. But would something like that accommodate something like what Blizzard North used to be? I don't know. It would take the right people at Blizzard to be comfortable with that.
Have you talked to people who worked at Blizzard North in 2004, 2005 about this question? They could answer it for you.
Yeah,
the answer's a no, by the way. As David Kraddick's book will share.
Will vividly illustrate.
Yeah. Once the big four were gone, I can't remember who those guys were. Dave somebody, anyway.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's true. You know, when we left, we took a lot of the senior management with us, and I would understand why the guys down south would have wanted to put a little tighter controls on what's going on up there. So yeah, I mean, it makes sense.
One of the interesting things that we talked about with Travis and the other guys is the difficulty and learning curve. Torchlight 1 and 2. Torchlight 1 really just kind of throws you in. It's like, you're in this town, here's a lot of NPCs, some of the new stuff with items, figure it out. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you've played a little bit of the Diablo III beta, it's very much on rails, very much training, very much new player friendly. Yeah. And I was really curious to see how Torchlight 2 was. How would you characterize Torchlight 2 on that? You know, kind of the easy to hard.
It's less so. I think that we don't quite throw you in as much as we did in Torchlight. You know, in other words, you're put into a very basic construct where you have really one thing to do, and that's, you know,
kill stuff.
You can talk to the NPC and follow the path. Yeah. And then, you know, that's a good, gentle way to introduce people into the game and into the story. You know, sometimes you got to remember that not everyone played Torchlight 1 or any of the Diablos, and might be looking at Torchlight 2 like it's some Martian game. You know, I have no idea what to do with anything. So you want to make an opening sequence that's easy and people aren't going to fail at. You know, we talk about a lot of there's a moment in any game where there's any variety of moments where people might quit. They might say, you know, this is frustrating, forget it, I'll get back to it later, and put it on the shelf, and they never get it back to it later. And so you want to eliminate all those moments from especially the first half hour of your game. Mm-hmm. And it looks like I played the Diablo III beta, and you definitely they're definitely setting that up to introduce you into the world and get you comfortable with the way things work and all that. So as a player, as someone who's done you know, obviously played the Diablos, you know, I was left wanting to see more of what they had done, you know, with the beta, because it, like you say, it is kind of aimed at the first-time players, it being the first part of the game. Yeah. You know, it's totally appropriate. But yeah, you know, it seemed like it was an appropriate introduction to people. I hope that it is less so as the game progresses, and I fully anticipate it is.
How do you feel you did that with Diablo 2? I mean, in terms of, like, compared to Torchlight, it seems like Torchlight seemed like there was a few more dungeon options early on than I remember from Diablo 2.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the first 10 minutes of Diablo 2.
You just kind of went out into the Bloodmoor, and there was the Den of Evil, and then...
Oh, yeah.
There were bigger areas, but there was only, like, one little sub-dungeon.
There were bigger areas, but we choked it down to little choke points fairly regularly, just to kind of keep you focused and going the right way. It's similar. Yeah. I think it's very similar.
You guys recently got Diablo 3 beta keys, so what did you think?
It was awesome. Yeah, I mean, there's a certain thrill about having someone else do all the work of making Diablo 3, because it's an enormous, you know, it's a titanic undertaking, and it's, in a way, it's weird to see someone else working on something that you had such a part in creating. But it's also just a tremendous relief, and it's a lot of fun just to kind of see their twists on things. And as everyone who's played the beta knows, it kind of revisits a lot of the archetypal things from Diablo 1, or Diablo, actually all the Diablos.
Yeah, Diablo 1 especially.
Diablo 1, yeah. I mean,
you're first serving, you're fighting the Skeleton King.
Yeah. And it was, you know, it was kind of it was really fun to see those things again and see other people's twists on them and takes on them. So yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed what the sliver that we got there, the little taste, and you know, I speak for almost everyone in this office and saying we'll buy the Diablo 3 the day it comes out. I think you said that seeing how Diablo 3 is, you pointed out that there's a big difference in the market for Torchlight, given that it's moddable, it's multiplayerable, or single player. Yeah.
You know, either or, and you can do it, you know, over LAN, over TCP/IP, that kind of stuff. Do you feel like there's other differences between Torchlight 2 and Diablo in terms other than just the technological and
yeah, I mean, obviously they kind of spring from the same area. So if you just look at them superficially, they've got isometric perspectives, mouse clicks to move, and even health and mana balls. But really, over time, I think they've grown apart more than maybe people expect. I think that they're both games have developed their own styles and their own pacings. I think we move. Torchlight's a little quicker, a little bit more fast paced, and the look and style of it is much more colorful and some would say cartoony, and it's a little more lighthearted. It's not a grim, gothic, dark universe, and we can have a little bit more fun with the characters and the monster designs and stuff, and make them a little wackier and get away with it. There's things that you really couldn't get away with in Diablo, and I'm not saying one's better than the other. They're both very valid paths, as well as I think it's valid for Blizzard to be making a very secure economy with the servers, and I understand their decision making that, but there's infinite ways to make cool games, and we've just kind of gone the other way with some of the economic stuff.
It's interesting in the game features that actually I'd say Torchlight 2 is much more similar to Diablo 2 than Diablo 3 is to Diablo 2. In terms of the skill trees, in terms of the potions, in terms of some of the items and stuff. And obviously you still have skill points and attribute points that you're assigning.
Sure. Yeah, I think that those are obviously we had started with Torchlight 1 and we had those things. We didn't feel like that was something that was broken that had to be fixed. We really wanted to focus on making a more compelling world and more variety of landscapes and dungeons and more interesting monster behaviors, and less about reinventing how you advance your character along.
I asked Travis a few of these questions about things like still having the benefits of still having stat points that you can assign yourself, and skill points, as opposed to just Diablo 3 just has one. You activate a skill or you deactivate a skill. You don't actually put points into it. And you guys are, I guess, a little more old school in this stuff, and you just feel that it certainly differentiates the titles. People gives you a different approach to the games. Yeah.
I mean, and our thought is that you want to be able to make lots of different kinds of Ember Mages, for example. And everyone's Ember Mage is their own unique individual, and so we really wanted to keep that sense that you could build and craft a character that's completely different than others, and is permanently that way, basically. I've only played the beta in Diablo 3, and so I don't really know how it's going to pan out in the long term with characters. That'll be interesting to see. I mean, maybe they nailed it. We're wallowing in the past, but we'll see.
It's interesting because their character differentiation comes from items and from the skill runes. And you guys don't have skill runes, but obviously you have the same stuff with items. But then you have skill points, which makes a huge difference. And you can put 1 point in a skill or 15 points in a skill.
Yeah.
It looked like, was 15 the max? That's probably still...
I think it's different per skill.
Yeah. And there was a couple of them. I played Ember Mage earlier, and there was a number of them were 15. But obviously that makes a huge difference. If you've got a lot of skills, and you've got 100 levels or so in the game. Of course, that's how Diablo 2 worked.
Right.
But in Diablo 2, it kind of worked out in the end that you would always either have 1 or 20 in each skill. You would never have 7.
Yeah. If you're a min-maxer.
In your in-game builds. Yeah. So then that's kind of what the Diablo 3 team now has argued, saying, well, it doesn't really matter if you have skill points because everybody either has 1 or 20.
Well, it took a while for that to develop, though. To figure out what the maximum builds are.
Yeah. Especially once synergies went in one of the patches.
Right. Each patch would change it. Yeah, and synergies and so forth.
Are there any synergies in Torchlight?
No.
Not especially.
No.
There's some passives, obviously.
Right.
One of the things you mentioned when we were talking last time was that the early Diablo 3 was an MMO in design. Obviously, it was very early.
Yeah.
It seems kind of crazy. I mean, we were playing Torchlight here earlier with 5 people in a game, and you guys said in the internal build, there's no limit. You can have 30 people or something, which would just be absolute total chaos.
Yeah, it would be unplayable.
So, how did you think about Diablo 3 initially as an MMO in terms of large groups of people who are all having these massively destructive spells?
The magic of instancing.
Yeah. So you were thinking it was going to be broken up into lots of different worlds and not have like raid kind of stuff?
Yeah, more or less. And then where there would be raid type of stuff, you would just make sure that your levels and monsters are designed for that, and that you would somehow compensate for the fact that 30 guys are having I mean, when you go back and you look, the skill effects were much less over the top back in the day. Like nowadays, like.
Well, you had like lightning fury and some stuff. The entire screen was lightning bolts.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I think it would have filled it up. It would have been a big blur.
Yeah. So you would have had to work on the particle effects kind of thing. To make
we would have had to tone it down to make it make sense.
One of the recently Jay Wilson was quoted in the last episode of PC Gamer, actually the last issue, said that the first version of Diablo III he played, which I guess was what they did up through like 2005, which was long after you left.
Right.
He said that it felt kind of like Diablo 2.5, like it was a little too reverent of the previous titles and didn't really break enough ground.
Well, hold on, I just played their beta.
Yeah.
And that was awfully reverent to Diablo II.
Yeah. Here we are, damn near 7 years later, and it's recreating Tristram and the Skeleton King. But I mean, obviously the game mechanics are new.
Yeah.
Did you feel in your early designs of D3, were you trying to make things really different in some ways?
No, I think we wanted. Well, it was 3D and it was an MMO and it had persistent open world areas, and we felt that exploring those avenues and MMOizing it was probably radical and revolutionary enough to try to keep some of the old conventions intact.
Yeah. But you probably thought about areas, and I mean, this one up here, there's different parts. The world's gotten bigger. I mean, you guys put the whole map in Diablo 2. And there's all these areas that the characters are from that you never see, but obviously we get to go to the jungles and the desert and and go to hell and everything. So did you have ideas for Diablo 3? I mean, it's been forever, obviously. But.
Yeah, I'm gonna let you in on a secret here about all the Diablos and where you go and stuff. And we basically said, let's go to really cool looking places and then figure out how it makes sense in the story later.
Which is pretty much every game works.
Every game works that way.
Yeah.
And so that's totally what we still do.
So you have guys that are you have like concept artists that are like, okay, we want this like with spikes on the walls, there's like plants and stuff. Okay, where can this fit in the world that makes any kind of sense with the plot and the lore?
Yes.
Okay. I think people think it's all the stuff comes out of like some grand notebook of logic. And we just kind of invent cool stuff to have cool stuff happen.
That's what Tolkien does. That's not what we do.
Yeah. So, Schaefer's hammer was one of the unique items in Diablo 1, and it returned in Diablo 2, obviously named after your brother Eric. And possibly
whoa. Named after me. We always argue about it.
Schaefer's hammer is returning in Diablo 3.
See, it's actually a template. Schaefer's hammer. It really refers to both of us.
Yeah.
So.
They've actually dropped one of the F's in this now. It's just
there's only one F.
I think they changed the spelling slightly in Diablo 3 anyway. I think it's missing one of the vowels, but I don't have it in front of me here. Yeah. But does that make you...
Everyone misspells Schaefer, so...
at least Max is pretty easy.
There you go.
M-A-K, there you go.
There
M-A-C-K-S. So, do you have great, sentimental, romantic, excited feelings that your name is still in this game, or you could care?
I wouldn't care if they had a Schaefer's hammer in there or not, but I'm glad they do. It's definitely cool. It's definitely cool. Yeah.
Will you be having a Wilson's hammer in Torchlight 2?
I suppose we probably should.
I'm sure. Actually, you got to find who does the items. I doubt Jay Wilson's doing the item.
Yeah, that's Eric. So I'll say tonight he should make a Wilson's item.
One other thing that carried over from Diablo 1 and Diablo 2 is Matt Ullman, who is now working on Torchlight. And he's this genius sound producer, musician, who keeps getting brought. I kind of think the Diablo 3 music guys, is Lawrence Juber and Russell Brower, who've done, obviously Juber is, he's in band with Paul McCartney. He's been, he's a very famous musician. And people are constantly asking him, can you play guitar like Matt Ullman? I'm not sure he really likes that comparison so much.
I would imagine.
He's like, I've been on stage in front of 100,000 people screaming in Brazil, and this guy makes music for a video game. But of course the Tristram theme, and the Matt Ullman's, his compositions, his 12-string guitars.
No, he's definitely a genius, and what luck for us to have.
How did you steal him away?
Well, stealing him away was we just. I don't know how we stole him away. We said, "Hey Matt, you want to come work?" Sure.
Did he ever work at Flagship?
No.
So he was at Blizzard until I think 2007.
Yeah, it was basically when we were starting up Runic that he was done with Blizzard. I don't really know what all the drama was there, or if there was drama.
You're not suggesting there was drama?
I'm not suggesting there was drama, but he was done with Blizzard and was very happy to come on, and we were fortunate enough that he wanted to be part of Runic. And boy, we're glad. Some of the music in Torchlight 2 sounds so great. I really can't wait for people to hear it.
And you had him. He did all the soundscapes. He's doing He's like breaking pencils in his office next to microphones and stuff. I mean, it's.
Yeah,
he's not just making music. He's doing much more than that.
He's doing much more than that. As did he in the early Diablos.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, he's great. He's a great dude.
You guys actually recorded some symphonies, right? You sent him off to Europe? And
yeah, after Gamescom this last time, he and I went to Bratislava, Slovakia, and recorded with their National Symphony that did the music for the Diablo II expansion, and I think some other Blizzard stuff subsequently, but I'm not sure. But
Matt has confirmed that he went again in 2005 and recorded for Diablo III.
Okay, yeah. Just
that cat's out of the bag.
Yeah, okay, good. And so yeah, it's having the live performed music just gives it a richness and a depth that you can't get with a keyboard.
Obviously, you don't do the music yourself, but one of the things I've noticed a lot, I was playing Torchlight a couple weeks ago to refresh my memory, and then playing the Diablo III beta, and the music is so much more forward in Torchlight. I mean, you hear music. Diablo 3 is very much with the ambient kind of background, like crickets chirping sort of sound effects a lot. And so they pump it up like when you fight, King Leoric or something, but generally it's very subtle. Whereas Torchlight, is that something you discuss? Is this all up to Matt in his own?
It's totally up to Matt.
He does?
Yeah, we figure he hasn't steered us wrong with the music and soundscapes yet. But I think it also just kind of goes to the style of the game, where we're not as dark and eerie and gothic-y. We're kind of more of a loud and boisterous world, so it makes sense for the music.
Do you play it with the sound on when you're testing? Always?
Yes.
Of course.
Yes, I do.
Immediate response. You didn't have to think that one over.
Yeah, I do like the sound makes such a big difference in just the feel of it. It makes testing more enjoyable.
So Torchlight 2 is nearly done. Last question here, Max.
Yeah.
And you're excited? You're coming down the home stretch?
Coming down the home stretch, and very excited to get it out. And we've sort of taken a step back recently and said, let's really look at what we've got and make sure it's all polished and as good as it deserves to be. And when it comes out, it comes out. And
if that takes a few weeks longer, you don't want to sacrifice quality for quantity.
Exactly. We want to be. We're in this for the long haul, and we want Torchlight 2 to be around for a long time, not just until Diablo 3 comes out.
If Torchlight were so popular and successful and famous that people quit asking you questions about Diablo, would you be happy or sad?
That's a good question. Both, because I love the Diablo series, and that's a big part of my life, and where I got my start in the business, and I hope that it's around forever. But then again, the question was predicated on Torchlight 2 being so big that we didn't talk about that anymore, which means I've got new things to talk about, which would be pretty cool. So I think I would take the trade. I would take the trade for sure.
Okay, here's your last stupid dating game type question.
Okay.
If you were a popsicle, what flavor would? No, I'm kidding. If you could not work
blood flavored.
If you couldn't work in the video game industry, what would you be doing? If you had, someone took a hostage and said you cannot make video games anymore. Sell used cars? I mean, you're loquacious.
Yeah, no, I couldn't do it because I have trouble lying.
That must cut into your PR duties, though.
Yeah, well, that's why I get in trouble every interview. Boy, I think about this a lot. Like, what am I going to do when I'm obviously too old to be working in this business?
Well, it's not like you're going to do heavy lifting,
Yeah. God, that's a good question. I've been lucky enough never to have to get a real job after college, and so I don't know what I would do. I might be homeless. I'd be at the Occupy protests, turning over trash cans or something. Though. Yeah, I know. I'd be in jail tonight. I'd be calling you, asking me to bail me out. No, I don't know.
Let's hope Torchlight's successful.
Yeah, boy, it has to be. Else I got to confront this.
Find Torchlight or Max Schaefer's on the street.
And greet her at Walmart or something.
You said you couldn't lie. You're out there.
Yeah. No,
welcome to hell, man. I can't
right.
I spit on you.
No, I don't know. I have a lot of interests. I'd like to renovate homes or open a bar or restaurant or something like that. There's lots of cool things that are out there to do, and I would just kind of look around and see. Because part of my theory is that it's not so much what you're doing is partnering with good, cool people, and I would look for good, cool people to partner with and do something interesting.
No, we'll hope that never has to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Max, thanks for your time. You've been listening to the Diablo Podcast. We are online at diablopodcast.com. Or maybe that should be Torchlight Podcast this week. Bye.